Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. You need your notebook out in order to be successful for this class. Tomorrow you have a list quiz. It's only on your court cases and on your primaries. That is happening tomorrow. Remember, Brown versus Board and Federalist 78 are on there. So make sure you are familiar with both of those cases. Thursday, you have a test, 25 questions, all multiple choice, of course. You have a focus, vocab, and breakdown are all being personally turned into me. Because some of y'all are turning in junk, and I'm over it. So the easiest way for me to check it is just to collect it by hand. So if you haven't done it, you need to make sure it's done, and it's beautifully done. Remember, I've written it 3 times. You can write it once. Is everyone clear on that? No sympathy. Your SCOTUS and your primary should already be submitted on Canvas. It has an 8:30 timestamp, so if you submit it off of that, after that I'm taking off 20%. That's 8 out of 10. Is everyone clear? You have plenty of time to submit it. Get it done because I'm tired of people turning in things late. And this is how it's going to be for the rest of our lives. Does that sound good? Perfect. Tula.
Do we still have, I'm Tatum.
Tatum, oh my God. I knew that. I'm so sorry.
Do we still have to highlight on the breakdown like this?
No, because I used to use that as for your list quiz, remember? And so we're not doing that. All right. Questions or concerns about the expectations on Thursday? It'll be the same expectations going forward. We've been doing the same thing for 6 weeks. Can we agree? It's about time that we start kind of cranking down and making sure things are getting turned in on time. Friendly reminder as well. On Friday, we start writing week. And we are going to have the most fun. Rinkus is in the middle of a writing week right now. And all my other AP World kids. Anyone else in AP World? Jade is, Maribel, Luke. How much fun are we having?
That's not as hard as I thought.
Oh, we'll wait till tonight, boss. So, we are transitioning to writing week. You will learn about your 4 major essays. The 5th one I'll teach you at a later date. And we'll kind of start that process. You will be writing essays this week. Every single day you'll have homework that's due the next day. How important is it to get your homework done, Rinkus?
Pretty important.
Yeah. You make Smith Bennett real cranky if you don't turn in your homework. All right, what is up, Estella?
Do we have like a focus?
Nope, you have no quizzes, no tests, no focuses, nothing. All you have is essays. So it's kind of nice in that regard. Sucks in other regards. You'll figure it out. You'll survive. Okay? Is everyone clear on the expectations? So Friday will be the first day of week 7. That's our writing week. You'll see what all your essays look like. We'll talk about what the test looks like. And it'll help you kind of see why we're doing the things that we're doing. It'll help. All right, here we go. Where did we leave off? Where did we leave off, Rinkus?
Most presidents do not want the justice.
There you go. So we talked about the federal court, the Supreme Court. How many justices are on the court, Jade? Yes. There are 9 justices. Why are there 9, Jade? Oh, well, no. Then we've had 56 presidents. So by that logic, we'd have 56 of them. So that would be wild. Have we had 56 or 47? I think it's 47. What do we got?
They want to keep it small so that presidents can't like appoint people from political parties and other.
Okay. What document tells them you have to have 9? Constitution. Write it down. Okay. The Constitution is the one that dictates 9 because at the convention they thought 10 doesn't make sense. They thought 11 because they need it on a number. Can we agree? We can't have a complete even because we have to have a breaking tie. They thought 11 was too many. They thought 7 was too few, so they settled on 9. Okay, they don't really have an argument for it, except it's smaller than 11, bigger than 7. Let's go with 9. Okay. What is the term used to describe adding more people to the court? Andrew. It's on your breakdown. I would take out your breakdown and have it on your desk. Every single one of you, because last period, people didn't do it, and it was annoying. Tula, what is it called when you're adding more people to the court? No. Colin. It is court packing. Write it down. Court packing. Court packing is when politicians argue that more justices should be added to the court. Which president is the first one to suggest this? What president, Ryan?
Andrew Jackson?
No. He's the only president who will serve 3 terms.
Roosevelt.
Well, there's multiple Roosevelts.
FDR.
FDR. There you go. You need to know it's FDR. You need to know that he is going to suggest appointing. Why would we want to add more justices? What's the argument? What's the political argument, Eve? Yeah, they want to change the tilt of the court. Write it down. They want to change the tilt of the court. Okay, by packing the court, they want to change the tilt of the court. So if it's leaning conservative, they want to tilt it liberal. Okay, so it's changing the tilt of the court. Put a big star. It is very controversial. Why is it controversial? Because it fundamentally does what? Think about it. Why is it controversial? I already gave you the answer. You just got to pull it through. Stella? Yeah, it goes against the Constitution right now. You have to literally change the Constitution in order to do it, and that's not very popular. How many times have we changed the Constitution in history? 28 times. Okay? So, 27 or 28 times. We haven't changed it that many times because it's very difficult to do, and it's very controversial when you do. That's why. So you need to know court packing. You need to know it's adding to change the tilt of the court. You need to know it's very controversial. It's not commonly used. Are people threatening to court pack now? Yeah, you do. You have some pretty extreme people on the Democrat side who have thrown out court packing, as in, hey, we should do this. Is it well received by a majority of the party of the Democrats? No. Is it well received in the House or in the Senate? Absolutely not. But every once in a while it gets thrown out there. Okay. Here we go. You need to know for the Supreme Court. Your next heading is going to be how cases get selected. That's your next heading, please. How cases get selected. Okay, 1. Okay, we kind of talked about it, but we're going to add a little bit more information to your little chart. 1, original jurisdiction has to occur. What is original jurisdiction, Maribel?
It's when the first people who get the Senate.
That's not saying anything. What is it, Ellie? Yeah, it's the first time a court case actually goes to trial. Okay, original jurisdiction is the first court case. The first time the case gets heard in trial. It's in the lower courts. Okay, it's in the lower courts. You need to have that term there. Okay, what would be a characteristic of an original jurisdiction? Like, what would you expect to see in an original jurisdiction, Tatum? A jury. What else would you expect to see, Colin?
Lawyers that know each other.
Okay, lawyers are in every phase of this, so no. What would it be, Mia? Just checking her messages or some shit over there.
Jury, you have evidence, and you have like the opening arguments and the whole trial.
You have the absolute whole trial, and the judge sits there to ensure, but doesn't talk. Okay, they don't really get involved. They're just there to ensure the process is occurring. Okay, so evidence, testimony, that's all happening in original jurisdiction. So once it goes through original jurisdiction, it then goes to where, Nikhail? Appellate jurisdiction. So if you don't agree with the ruling, you go to the appellate jurisdiction. Okay? This is done in district courts. You need to have these terms in there. So we have lower courts, and now we have district courts. Okay? And what is actually happening in these district courts, the appellate level, Sean?
It's like a review of the word.
Don't say review. There's a very specific A word you have to have. It's an appellate jurisdiction. What's the A word, Stella? It's an appeal. They're trying to overrule the previous judge's ruling or the previous jury's ruling. It's an appeal process. You have to know the word appeal, and that is happening in appellate jurisdiction, and that is happening in your district court. Once it goes through that appeal process, then it can jump to the Supreme Court. Yeah, it typically goes through 2 stages, but you don't need to know that. It goes to the state level, and then it goes to the national appellate jurisdiction, and then it goes to the Supreme Court, but you don't need to know that. Then it jumps to the Supreme Court. Once it's in the Supreme Court, every justice gets a brief. What is a brief, Bronson?
Tells you what the case was about.
Is it in-depth or pretty light?
In-depth.
It's very in-depth. It's like monstrous binders of information. So a brief is all the testimony, evidence, and arguments made in the case and a full breakdown of the ruling. Okay, is handed to each of the justices. Each of the justices, this is number 4, by the way. Each of the justices get to review. How do they pick the cases they actually want to read about, Eve? Rule of 4. Each justice gets to decide if they want to hear this case in oral argument or not. If 4 of them agree to hear it, then they have to do it. Okay, put a star. Most cases are rejected. Like 85% are rejected. Why? Why are they rejected from the brief stage? Why are they rejected, Haley? They agree with the lower ruling. You have to understand that. So they read about this whole court case, they read all the evidence, they read all the things, and they agree with the lower courts, and they don't need to change it, so they dismiss it. Write it down. Okay, so they agree with the lower hearing. Okay, if it's selected is number 5. If selected, if selected, the case will go to oral arguments, and I would underline oral arguments. You have to know it. You should underline brief. You should underline original jurisdiction. You should underline appellate jurisdiction. These are real vocab terms we're using here, people. Okay? They go to oral arguments. Oral arguments is when 9 justices when 9 justices listen to 2 lawyers argue the case. Okay, put a star. Justices can ask questions. Why is that special? Why is that special? AP loves that fact. I don't really know why they love it so much, but why is that unique? Why is that unique, Oliver?
The lower courts usually just sit there.
Well, they don't just sit there. They're there to mitigate any trial errors, but they're not there to actively engage in the process. They're to ensure you have a successful court case, that both sides are heard, and then the jury can make the decision. But they're not there to solve the problem for you, right? It's not a trial by judge. It's a trial by jury. So they're trying to ensure that the jury is getting all the information that they need in an environment that allows in the innocent until proven guilty to occur. So keep that in mind. In the Supreme Court, though, the justices can't ask questions. Why can they ask questions there? Because there's no jury. So they can ask deeper questions, and they can do all those types of things. Okay. So, has anyone ever seen the Supreme Court building? Have you seen it, Eve, in DC? Okay, it's huge, isn't it? It's it's way bigger than the White House. Okay, it's way bigger because that house was built in the 1800s, early 1800s. This house is built. It's huge. It's one of actually the largest structures in DC. And the reason why it's so big is the edifice, or the front of the building, is supposed to be really daunting and intimidating because it's like the enforcement of American law. So that's why. If you go into it, as soon as you walk in, you actually enter the oral chambers. And like you walk in, and it's like huge. It looks like you're in like a Greek temple, because it's supposed to, because the Greeks created democracy. It's supposed to be a temple for democracy. You see with their connection here. And then about 8 feet off the ground, there's a solid marble wall. And then behind that 8 feet wall is where the justices sit. It looks like the Flintstones, like court case, if you've ever watched the Flintstones, how they're sitting up there. And they sit there, and then the lawyers stand below them and argue. There's no cameras allowed inside the Supreme Court. No pictures can be taken inside the Supreme Court. The only images we get from the Supreme Court are hand-painted images. During the pandemic, obviously the whole world shut down, yes. They actually allowed the recordings of the oral arguments to occur because no one could hear the arguments that were happening in the oral chambers except for the 9 justices and the 2 lawyers. And they are trying to decide whether they should keep that going. But they've kind of suspended it for now because the Supreme Court's not very popular amongst Americans. They've had a bunch of scandals, not just the Roe versus Wade, but they've had a bunch of scandals. Clarence Thomas has gotten himself in multiple challenges. Anyway, but that's what it looks like. And then behind the oral chambers is all like completely locked down and stuff like that. And that is the justice wings is where like all of the actual laws are being followed and processed and briefs go and stuff like that. What do you got?
What happens if all the justices like
Can't go to work. Then they excuse themselves from the case, and the Chief Justice gets to decide. These things don't move very fast, which we should be very grateful as Americans, right? We want the right choice, not the quick choice, right? So if you're like sick for a day, it's not like a big deal because these cases take, a year to kind of go through there. But if you're like super sick, you have to, eventually they'll push you to retire. You either die or retire. Isn't that absurd? It's kind of wild. All right, anyway, what do you got?
Can they be impeached?
Yeah, of course. Clarence Thomas has gotten himself in a lot of trouble, and there's a lot of movement amongst Democrats and even some Republicans to impeach him. Because they're supposed to be separate, right? They get life appointments so they can stay away from political contributions and stuff like that. Whatever your political opinions are, I'm just telling you the facts. Clarence Thomas's wife is a huge Trump donor. Like huge. Like millions and millions of dollars to the Trump campaign. He has also accepted millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of donations from billionaires who have had cases heard in front of the Supreme Court. So they're trying to figure out if they're going to impeach him. They're trying to go through Chief Justice Marshall to see if he will deal with this problem. He currently is not dealing with the problem, so America is kind of trying to push to see if we're going to impeach him. But they can be impeached. It's not very common. I think it's only been done a few times, if it's been done a few times. So the bench is very controversial at the moment. Anyway, okay. So once we have the oral arguments, then we go to conferences. The next step is conferences. Conferences is when only the justices, not their clerks, not their assistants, only the justices sit in a room and argue the case amongst each other. So the way it's set up is really kind of cool. So you can walk into, you can't like right off the street. Like if Ash wants to go walk in and talk to Clarence Thomas, he can't. We all understand that, right? They're huge figures with an enormous amount of power. But every justice's office has 2 doors. One that anyone can enter and only one they can go in. And in the back of it, so essentially all of their offices form a circle, and behind their desk is a door, and in that door is the conference room. And there's only 9 seats, there's only 9 doors into that conference room, and it is completely soundproof, and no one is allowed in there. No clerks, no aides, nothing. It is only for the justices. Why do they want complete secrecy of what is happening in the conference? It's actually a good thing. It's actually a good thing. Why, Andrew?
So the ruling is like
So the what?
so they can like talk about.
Yeah, they can have a genuine, open conversations about the law. Absolutely. If you knew everything you were saying was going to get out to the public and it's very unpopular, would you say what you wanted to say? No. We need our justices to have very open and frank conversations with each other about the impacts of the law because we need to get to the actual solution of the problem. Can we agree? So everything is super locked down so they can have open and frank conversations about the law and they can actually put their thoughts and opinions into the discussion. Now, We obviously know that Roe versus Wade got overturned by the Dobbs decision. The Dobbs decision was two big reasons. Two shocking things for two big reasons, right, Luke? Okay? First one is it overturned a precedent for 60 years. The second is that news broke about 3 months before the official word came out that a brief was stolen from the conferences and published. It is the first time in Supreme Court history. It is such a big deal that they fired like 50 of the top clerks, law clerks at the Supreme Court. You do need to know the term clerks. Write it down. What is a clerk? It's better than an intern. Someone said it's an intern. It's not an intern. Interns are like going to get coffee and shit. What's a clerk? Colin? What's a clerk?
A clerk is like somebody who's like, they like work for the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
And they like help the justices like
Do their research. There you go. Yeah, you're completely right. So a clerk, write it down, are lawyers. So it's not like high school kids. They're lawyers, okay, who assist the justice in research and managing briefings. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, do you think these are, you know, the regular around the corner graduates or the creme de la creme? They're the ones going to Harvard, Stanford, Yale. Yale's known for their law school. Over the Harvard and Yale, the two most prestigious for law. Okay, they're the creme de la creme, and they work. Why would they want to work at the Supreme Court as a clerk? Why? It makes sense. All of you are looking for opportunities that are similar. Maribel. Okay, I mean there is a lot of power, but why would you want a clerk? You're not a justice, Chris.
To eventually become a justice.
Okay, well there's only 9 justices, so all the clerks there can't all be justices, right? Rankus? What do you got, Oliver?
Because there's always so much more for you to do.
Well, yeah, but that's why they have them. Colin?
connections.
Yeah, it's prestigious. It's incredibly prestigious that you worked for the Supreme Court. Guys, it opens every door to any law firm in the country would beg to have you. Yes? So you do it for a couple of years, you do it for like 4 years, you clerk for the Supreme Court, and then you can walk into any crazy high-paying law firm in the country and you can get whatever you want for salaries. That's why you do it. It's huge. Okay? All right, what do you got?
You get selected to.
Creme de la creme. You're going to the best law school and your most famous law advisor writes you a letter of recommendation and you apply.
Or like do the justices.
Yeah, they handpick. They handpick their clerks. What do you got? Do you have a question, Leah? Okay. So, what do you got, Ellie?
How long do they work for?
Usually about 4 years. Okay, so they graduate law school, so they're full lawyers, they take the bar, and then they go work for the Supreme Court. Okay? It's not common. Okay? And it allows you to open doors to like anything. If you see a judge on TV, like they're that famous that they're on TV, like reputable ones. Judge Judy, I don't think clerk for the Supreme Court. She might have though. I mean that woman rakes in cash, so maybe she has. Anyway, with that being said, when they go into conferences, it's about having open dialogue. Okay, you need to know they also welcome amicus curiae. What is amicus curiae, Nikhil? It's a circle of friends, and what is it? Yeah, what's it for? Who's writing them? Huh? No, it's not the justices, because they write opinions. What is it, Ryan? Who are they? No, they're not asking a bunch of law students to write this. Oh, gosh. What do you got, Jade?
Like the rich people.
Oh, no, they're not asking rich people. No, they're not asking rich people. Yeah.
Wait, are you saying like they're coming?
Who are these friends of the court? Who are they?
Their constituents?
No. Tatum.
Other judges?
Yeah, they're other judges. They're other judges. Well-known, affluent, powerful, legally respected judges around the country. Amicus curiae are other influential judges from all around the country. Because keep in mind, there are only 9 justices who are sitting on the court, but there's long lists of who could be the next replacement. Is everyone clear on that? Guess where the amicus curiae comes from? The list of who would probably be the next ones to fill it. Is everyone clear on that? Okay? So, it is highly respected law professors at Harvard and Stanford and Yale and Princeton. It's other people who are actually still on the bench doing the thing. It's incredibly respected legal minds. Why are they asking these people, Anna? Why would they be asking a bunch of judges questions?
Because they also have opinions.
Yes, they want to hear what other judges that they respect opinion. Okay, they want to hear other people that they respect opinion on what they're deciding. Because when they decide something, is it law? Does it have huge impacts? Absolutely. So they want other people who they respect to get those opinions in. So, once the Supreme Court agrees to hear the brief, it goes to oral arguments. Then it goes to conferences. And in conferences, they also have the amicus curiae. It's all usually happening around the same time. And then they go to the final thing. And what is the final step, Ash? How do they issue their rulings, Ash? Well, they do vote on it, but how do they tell us, the regular people? Because they vote in conferences. Then they write what? No, jurisdiction is what gives them authority. Rinkus. Opinions. They write their opinions. That's how they declare what they're ruling, is they do it through opinions. Write it down. The final step is opinions. There are two types of opinions. What is one of them, Megan? Oh my goodness, my heart is broken. Rinkus! Majority opinion. That's the one that wins. Okay? So they at least have 5 people who agree with it. The majority opinion is written by one judge on behalf of all that agree on them. Okay? The majority opinion is the one that wins, and it is written by one of the judges. What is the second opinion? Also published at the same time. Jade? No, concurring is the people who agree with them. What do you got? Dissenting opinions. Dissenting opinion. These are the people who lost. Okay, they lost their arguments, but they want to publish their own thoughts. Why is it important we see the dissenting opinion? Most people actually read the dissenting opinion first. Why? Why is the dissenting opinion important, Colin?
So that we know what, so that we're like aware of what like everybody thinks.
Yeah, we get to see the whole argument. We get to see what actually went down between all the justices, and it gives us a better idea of what they're actually declaring. Okay? Every once in a while you get concurring opinions. Write it down. Every once in a while you get concurring opinions where someone feels very passionate about something, whether they're in agreement or disagreement, and they publish their own thoughts. It usually only happens on controversial ones. Okay? Very, very, very rarely do all 9 justices issue their opinions. We saw it with the Dobbs. When it overturned Roe v. Wade, every single justice published their thoughts on overturning Roe v. Wade. And that broke 5-4 with the majority overturning Roe v. Wade. Every single person published their opinion because it's such a controversial move. But it's very rarely you get 9 opinions. Questions about how court cases go through the Supreme Court. This is the format. This is how things work. Okay, let's talk about your next subheading is jurisdictions. Okay. Original jurisdiction. Chris, what is it? We already talked about it.
It's when the lower courts.
Yep.
Approve, and then it.
No.
No.
Nope. What is the lower courts are doing what?
The lower courts.
Ellie, help them out. Yeah, they're the ones actually doing the actual trials. So when we say trial, what's happening in the trial? We have.
They're arguing the.
Yeah, they're arguing the case. We have who makes the decisions. So if I arrest you right now for shoplifting and you
Oh,
go to
the jury.
trial, yeah, there's a jury, there's testimonies, there's evidence. All those things are only heard on the original jurisdiction. Okay, this is the first time the crime's been heard. The second is your appellate jurisdiction. Those are all your what, Sean?
Appeals.
Yes, those are all your appeals. And those are at the district level. district level. Okay, you should note, and you should make a note, that your original jurisdiction, every county has a courthouse on the lower level. Every county in the country has one. Districts are by regions. So, we in Tampa have a district court. Yes, it's right next to our state courthouse, okay, or our lower level court. We have a federal court right next to it because we're Tampa and we have a huge population, okay? Now, your third layer is your legislative courts. Write it down. We have not talked about this one at all. The other two you should be familiar with. We've talked about them a bunch. The legislative courts we haven't discussed. Luke?
Why wouldn't your state court be like Tallahassee?
Because they need to be where the people are, Luke. Imagine how difficult if you had to go to Tallahassee every time, like, you broke a state crime, right? Every time you jaywalked, that's a state crime, not a federal crime. You gotta go all the way to Tallahassee. How often do you go to Tallahassee? I think I've been there like 3 times in my entire life. Hell no, am I going back.
Why can't you just put it in like Orlando because that's like the middle of the city?
Why can't we have it convenient to do quick and early justice, people? Why does it have to be far away? Why can't we have it where the people are so we can have quick and orderly justice? We are protected by that in our Bill of Rights, are we not? I'm not going to Orlando either and sitting in traffic for 4 hours to go 10 minutes. Hell no. No. Lower courts are where the people are. We here in Hillsborough County have like 13 courts here in Hillsborough County for the state level, lower level. Plant City has its own court, people, because we want to keep justice local, and that's nice. Okay. With your district courts, you need to write the district courts are created by Congress. Got me all flustered trying to send me to Tallahassee and Orlando. Hell no. Okay. You need to know that district courts are created by Congress. Legislative courts is where we left off. These are when people are directly challenging the government. Or the government is challenging people directly. This is like U.S. tax court. So if you don't pay your taxes, you don't go to a criminal court, you go to a legislative court. Okay? There are very few of them around. How often do people go directly after the government? Not usually. Usually challenge a law, you don't go right after the government. They're not very common. And then, what is our top tier? Supreme Court. You do need to know for your Supreme Court that it has 2 jurisdictions. And what are those 2 jurisdictions, Alexandra? Help her out, Eve.
No, I've got it. The original jurisdiction.
Yes! And?
Appellate.
Appellate jurisdiction. The Supreme Court has 2. They have original jurisdiction and appellate jurisdiction, which means the Supreme Court can hold a trial. Okay? And the trials are usually dealing with foreigners. So if a foreigner of very high influence and power comes over here and commits a crime, then they get tried by the Supreme Court. Every once in a while it happens. In the 70s we tried, in the 80s we tried a Saudi in the court. You know, a Saudi billionaire. He broke a couple laws here in the United States, and we tried him in the Supreme Court. It's very rare. Put a big star. Put a big star. Most court cases are appeals or appellates. Okay? Like 99%. What do you got, Colin? Are you in? You're totally into this stuff, huh? Do you want to be a lawyer?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, man. That's awesome. This is not for me. This is not what I enjoy.
So, is the Supreme Court like not allowed to hear legislative appeals?
No, they can only hear if someone challenges a law. Then they can't just say, hey, that seems kind of shitty. Let's argue that case. It has to go through the courts. It has to go from original jurisdiction to appellate jurisdiction, and then can be elevated to the Supreme Court. Like, for instance, Donald Trump, he had a court case heard by the Supreme Court. He made some sort of assertion about January 6th, and it went through original jurisdiction, and they said, we can't make this ruling, it's a president. Then it went to the appeals, and the appeals were like, yeah, we're going to default to the Supreme Court, and then he actually stood hearing in the Supreme Court. I don't remember exactly what it was about, but he got heard in front of the Supreme Court because it's such a huge, impactful thing. Yes? Okay. So, those are your major jurisdictions. Skip a space, center it. Here we go. Okay, the next thing you need to know is that there are 2 types of courts. There are 2 types of courts. You have federal courts And then you have, in every state, you have two types of courts. State courts. You have federal courts and you have state courts. State courts. Okay? They're next to each other here in Tampa. They're actually across the street. You have a federal courthouse, which is dealing with all your federal. What kind of crimes do you commit if you break a federal law? Felony. It's a felony. And if you break state law, it's just a criminal. You do need to know that there are two types of cases that get heard in court. You have criminal cases and then you have civil cases. Criminal cases means you actually break a law, whether it's a state law or a felony, that is a criminal case. These are the most popular types of cases. Okay? Most court cases are criminal. And then the second type of case is called a civil case. That's when you sue someone else. Okay? So, it's when you sue someone or a company or something like that. And you go after them for money. You're not looking to send them to jail. You're looking for money or compensation. Okay? When we're talking about civil cases, it is typically done within the state, not typically in the federal courts. Okay? All right. District courts. Perfect. Courts of appeals. I don't need you to know too much. Okay, we already covered that stuff. Okay. I don't need you to write this down, but I think it is helpful to see. So we have the Supreme Court up here, okay? You have your state trials. So if you break a law here in the state of Florida, you go to original jurisdiction and you go to the local courthouse right around the corner and you do a state trial, whatever that is. If you don't agree with how it goes out, you go to the intermediate appellate, which is the district courthouse for the appellate functions. And then you go to the state Supreme Court case. Okay, then you send it to the Florida State Supreme. Every state has a Supreme Court that is in charge of their state court cases. Is everyone clear on that? If the state of Florida is like, shit, we have no idea what to do with this case, then they send it to the Supreme Court case. So that is the tiering of how it goes. Is everyone clear on that? So it stays lower. Then it goes to district, then it goes to state, then it goes to the Supreme Court. See, I could be doing that. Okay. All right. So, checks is your next heading, please. Checks on the Supreme Court. I think the checks are the hardest part. It blows my mind. And you need to write this. You don't need to write, it blows my mind. You don't need to write that. But you need to write down the fact that I'm about to tell you. It blows my mind that Congress and the executive board can ignore a Supreme Court ruling. Exactly. Fascinating. Fascinating. Isn't it? Isn't that just the craziest thing? No? Okay. I think it's bizarre. Have a good day. I'll see you tomorrow. We got a lecture. You have a list quiz. Get your work done. The focus and stuff is pretty easy this week, isn't it? Are we alive? Do we have feelings? Do we have thoughts? No? Okay. Well, see you, my darling. Have a good day, my good. Bye, sweetie. Have a nice day, Tano. See ya, Mary. I'll see you later, Maribel. Bye, Stella. Have a nice day, darling. Thank you. It's only third period, though. What's up? Oh, glad that's happening. Not that you need the surgery, but I'm glad it's getting done. Okay, I mean, it'll be the middle of writing week. Not ideal. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I would follow along with my lectures. Okay. See ya.
Have a nice day.
You too, Alexandria. Way to come up with that answer, girl. Way to pull it out of the sky.